The knocking began before I even reached the door. 3 slow, heavy blows from inside the cabin, answering my footsteps in the snow. I hadn't even touched the handle, but something on the other side already knew I was there. I stood on the porch, my breath fogging the frozen air, and just listened. The forest around the cabin was silent, a kind of quiet that pressed against my eardrums. No wind, no insects, just the smell of old pine and wet rot drifting from the warped wooden walls. The cabin looked smaller than I remembered from the photos. It crouched between black, skeletal trees, like an animal waiting to spring. I told myself it was just an old place settling, that the knocking was just wood shrinking in the cold. I told myself this trip was meant to help me forget the city, to escape the nights filled with constant noise, but none of those thoughts felt true. I opened the door. The smell hit me first. It's damp earth, mold, and something sickeningly sweet beneath it. The air inside was warmer than outside and felt heavy, clinging to my skin. The single room was lit by a small window caked in grime. Dust motes floated in the weak light, like pale, ghostly insects. There was a table, a chair, a narrow bed pushed against the far wall. Everything looked like it had been untouched for years. The door slammed shut behind me. I spun around, grabbing the handle. It wouldn't move. I pulled harder, feeling the wood flex, but the door stayed sealed tight. The knocking came again. This time, it was from the wall right behind the bed. 3 slow blows, patient, deliberate. I stumbled back, and my heels struck something on the floor. I looked down and saw deep scratches carved into the wooden planks. Long, desperate marks, like fingers, had been dragged again and again, pulling toward the bed. My mouth went dry. The knocking started to move. It traveled across the walls with a scraping sound, circling the room as if something unseen was dragging its hand along the boards. Could hear the wood creaking under pressure, and a faint, wet sound, like someone trying to breathe through mud. "Stop it!" I shouted. My voice sounded small and pathetic, dying in the corners of the room. Then the whispering began. It came from everywhere and nowhere at once, a low murmur just beneath the edge of hearing. The sound crawled up my spine. Words pressed against my ears, but refused to form. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The whispering was inside my head. Images flooded my mind. A man standing in this exact room years ago. His hands were bloody, his eyes wide with terror. He was pounding on the walls, screaming for someone to open the door, but no one came. The cabin listened, the forest listened, and something else listened, and learned his voice. The whispering stopped. The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. I forced myself to move, crossing to the window. I wiped the grime away with my sleeve. Outside, the forest had changed. The trees leaned inward now, their branches twisting toward the cabin like claws. The sky was darker than it should have been. The path I'd walked was completely gone. A sound came from the bed. The mattress sank, as if someone had just sat down. The blankets rippled. The air above the bed seemed to shimmer and bend, and a shape began to form. Long limbs, a body that was far too thin, a head that hung at an impossible angle. I couldn't scream. My throat locked as the thing pulled itself upright. Its skin looked like old, peeling bark stretched tight over bone. Its face was smooth where eyes and a mouth should be, with only deep, carved grooves where features once were. It leaned toward me. When it spoke, the voice was my own. It told me I had been lonely for a very long time. It told me the cabin had been lonely for even longer. It told me the walls remembered every sound ever made inside them. Every fear, every final breath. The cabin didn't let those sounds leave. The thing reached out a long, splintery hand and touched my chest. A deep cold spread through me, and my own memories spilled from my mind into the air. Nights of waking up alone. The deep, knowing fear of silence. The secret desire to just disappear somewhere quiet. The walls began to whisper again, but this time they spoke clearly. They spoke my name. I staggered back and fell against the door. The handle turned under my hand. The door creaked open. Cold, fresh air rushed in. The forest waited beyond. The thing on the bed didn't move. It just tilted its head and listened. I didn't stop until my lungs burned and my legs shook. The trees blurred past me, their branches cutting my skin. The whispering followed, always just behind me, always calling. I burst from the forest onto the road where my car was parked. I threw myself inside and locked the doors, my hands shaking as I jammed the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life, drove away without looking back. Miles passed, the whispering finally faded. The road stretched, empty and pale under my headlights. Relief washed over me in waves. I laughed, a broken, cracking sound in my throat. Then something knocked from inside the back seat. 3 slow, deliberate blows. I froze, my eyes locked on the rearview mirror. Where my reflection should have been, the cabin sat. Its door was open. The darkness inside was deep and welcoming. And from within it, my own voice whispered softly. It told me I was home. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more chills. Thanks for watching.